This is the answers to the spiral worksheet. Number 4, reviewing the properties. Here's your word box. Reflexive, we're going to remember RST 1, 2, 3. This can be your trick. RST 1, 2, 3. Reflexive is one property, x equals x. Symmetric is two properties, x equals y, y equals x. Switch sides. And the transitive property requires 3. A equals B, B equals C, well then A equals C. A is just C. Requires 3 properties. So you remember RST 1, 2, 3. All the other ones are properties that you should remember. Identity is who you are does not change. The waste of time property, plus 0 times 1. The associative property, that is the 8th grade girl property. It's a property of bullying, it's a property of exclusion, someone's left out. Commutative property, to commute means you travel to different places. You commute to work, you commute to school, you move from one place to another. Commutative property moves numbers. The distributive property, also known as the whoosh-whoosh property, where you distribute. The multiplicative inverse is reverse, so you add the opposite. Not switch the order, you add the opposite, or multiply by the opposite. This is where we talk about reciprocals. 2/3, the reciprocal would be 3 over 2. And additive inverse, if you have a number, let's say 5, you would add a negative 5. Now, of course, the multiplicative property of 0 says if you multiply by 0, you get 0. Let's actually go through these. Add a number, stay the same. That's a waste of time property, or the additive identity. Multiply by 0, turn to 0. That's the multiplicative property of 0. Number 3, while there are two numbers associating, it's not the associative property because it's not addition everywhere. I see multiplication right here. It is actually the whoosh-whoosh, or distributive property, also known as the distributive property of multiplication over addition. If 4 equals x, x equals b, then 4 equals b, that's 3. That's the transitive property. 32 times 1, multiply by 1, stay the same. That's the multiplicative identity, stay the same. 9 plus 8, 8 plus 9, you change order, CO, change order, that's the commutative property, this time of addition. Number 7, if 32 equals 4 equals 36, and 36 is 6 squared, then 32 plus 4 must equal 6 squared. Again, 3 equations, that's your hint that it could be, and it is the transitive property. Number 8, 16 plus 13 plus 8 equals 16 plus 13 plus 8. Notice that the order stayed the same, but 13 was hanging out with 8, and now 13 left 8 and is now hanging out with 16. And 8 has been excluded. It's been bullied out. That is the associative property of addition. Why addition? Because it's only plus signs there. Number 9, 6 to 12, 6 to 12. Again, the order stayed the same, but 2 is hanging out with 12, and now 2 ditches 12 and hangs out with 6, and 12 is being left out. That's the associative property of multiplication, the 8th grade girl property, bullying property. 6 times 9, 6 times 9, the same thing. Well, it's not the associative property, but it's the same thing twice. That's called the reflexive property. The reflexive property, not reflective, reflexive property, so it's the same thing on both sides. 5 plus 6 is 11, and 11 equals 5 plus 6. It looks like it's switched sides. Not the commutative property. Commutative property of addition and commutative property of multiplication is when you rotate around a plus sign or you rotate around a multiplication sign. They're not flipping around that. It's actually the equal sign that they're switching around. Since they're switching around that, that's the symmetric property. Again, RST 1, 2, 3. Number 12, 22 plus the negative version turns to 0. They cancel each other out. That's the additive inverse. 13, well, we see two numbers associating, but there's nothing associating here. You think it might be the associative property, it's not. There's actually multiplication and subtraction. Another example of the whoosh-whoosh property or the distributive property. 6, 3, 8, 6, 3, 8, order stayed the same. 3 is with 8, now 3 is with 6. Again, the associative property of addition, 8th grade girl, or bullying property, because 8 is left out in the cold. 2 times a half, these are called reciprocals. You might say, well, 2 is not a fraction. Yeah, this is 2 over 1. Any whole number can be 2 over 1. You flip it upside down, that's 1 over 2. This is the multiplicative inverse. 16 minus 5 equals 16 minus 5, the exact same thing on both sides. The order didn't change. The exact same thing is called the reflexive property. 12 plus 4 is 16. 16 is 4 squared. Well, then 12 plus 4 must be the thing at the end, 16. That's like a train car. Train car just hooking up. That's the transitive property. Again, 3 equations, transitive property. 322, 2, 322, 2. The order stayed the same, but again, 2 is left out in the cold. It is the associative property of multiplication this time because it's all multiplication. And the last two, 29 times 1 multiplied by 1 stayed the same, sort of a waste of time. That is the multiplicative identity. And 6 plus 11, 11 plus 6. Now notice it's not the exact same thing. In this case, they changed order and they rotated around a plus sign. The plus sign is what it rotated around. This is the commutative property of addition. Don't say, well, it was a symmetric property. No, the symmetric is when it rotates around an equal sign. Plus it needs two equations. 6 plus 11, 11 plus 6. This is what it rotated around. And flip about that. That means that's the commutative property of addition. The only properties that are not on here, but things you definitely should know, are the additive, the multiplicative, the subtraction, and the division property of equality. There's one for multiplication, there's one for subtraction, and there's one for division. Essentially what's saying, we use this with solving, 2x plus 3 equals 17. Minus 3, minus 3. If I subtract 3 from one side, subtract 3 from the other side, that's called the subtraction property of equality. 2x equals 14. Divide that side by 2, divide that side by 2. That's called the division property of equality because it divided both sides by 2. That's how we solve x equals 7. So just reviewing with you those ones. Clearly, as you can see, they're not in our word bank for this one, but it's definitely something for you to know.